Barbara felt restful, floating above the clouds that were her troubled life. She tossed and turned, trying her best to shut the painful memories out. But they were there, so real as though she could touch them. But no, she wasn't drifting at all, she was swinging, on Sarah's swing. Filled with the joy of the ride, the cool night air on her face, and the wind on her hair. So free. The daylight was easing slowly away, but that didn't bother her. She would be quite safe in her own backyard. The joy seemed to flee from her like a flock of migrating birds. Something moved amongst the trees, coming closer and closer. Then it was there right in front of her, pure evil with no face. It grabbed her arm. The next thing Barbara knew, she was wide awake, and that she had been dreaming. Life slowly flooded back into her body along with a splitting headache. The sweet smell of hot chocolate brought her back, and the sound of rain hitting a nearby window pane. Everything around her was blurred, shapes moved about her like aliens. She shook her head. The image improved a little. "Barbara, thank God you're okay." Sally's voice sounded hopeful. "It was lucky Mum found you. It must have been quite a fall." It was painful trying to remember last night, her head still hammered with pain. "No, Sally, where are my glasses? I can't see very well." "They must have been cracked in the fall." She placed something into her friend's hand. "It's hot chocolate, it should make you feel a bit better." "What happened, Sally?" She took a sip of the warm substance. "Your mum rang up last night. She was worried because you hadn't come home. So we went out looking for you. My mum found laying on the pavement. But I didn't trip. Someone tripped me up. I heard someone was following me. It must have been the person that made those phone calls." "Maybe," Sally whispered. "How are you feeling, Barbara?" Miss Faulkner said, as she came in the room. "You must have hit your head pretty hard last night. Your mum will be here soon. I've told her what happened." "Why can't I tell them the truth? Sally will be able to back me up." She was threatened too. "Miss Faulkner, someone tripped me up last night. I didn't fall. There were the footsteps, and, she turned towards the red-headed form. "Sally, tell her how he threatened you, how it was a caller that attacked her." "Barbara, you're confused," her advisor said. "I may have been us out looking for you." "No," she continued to protest till a pounding came at the front door. It was Mrs. Hoffman. She heard her mother's worried voice. "How is she?" "She seems okay, had a little bit of shock." "Her glasses have been broken," said Miss Faulkner. "It must have been quite a bad step. It was lucky you found her when you did." Then the talking seemed to grow quieter. Barbara knew they would be talking about her. Miss Faulkner would tell her mum about what she had said about being knocked over. Her mum would say it was her paranoia, and that she was having a hard time at home. The next moment the door opened. She saw her mother's form enter the room. "Barbara." She drew closer and gave her daughter a hug. "How are you feeling?" "Oh, just great, Mum, but it would be nice to see properly again. Now we're going to have to find an optician." Getting to her feet, Barbara groaned. The area at the back of the neck where she had been struck still hurt like hell. "Out. Take it easy," her mum said. She helped her to her feet. "All we have to worry about is getting you back home." "Oh, that's the last thing I need, going back to that swing house and Colin. But I've got to go to school." She looked up at her advisor for help. "You're in no fit state to go to school," Mrs. Hoffman warned. "I'll find an optician for you, while you're resting." "Your mum's right, Barbara," Miss Faulkner joined in. "We've managed to keep going while our students are off sick. There's no way I'm going to win this, is there?" Sally was nowhere to be seen when they stepped out the front door. It was still bucketing down with rain. The ground was soaked to a dull gray color, just the way they looked last night. "If there's any way we can repay your kindness, just let me or Barbara know, okay? I'm here to help. Please call me Jane when I'm not in school." She turned and headed back indoors. The journey home was in complete silence. Barbara couldn't help but feel betrayed by her mother. "Talking to Miss Faulkner like that behind my back. She thinks I'm being paranoid again." "I know she does. I can't see it in her eyes. I've seen it so many times before." She stared out of window, watching the grayness around her. It would fit into her dull life very well at the moment. Something cracked on the front windshield as the wipers flopped back and forth. Again, the same snapping sound as hail started pounding from the sky above. For a moment it seemed as though some would break through the glass, but it held as the onslaught eased a little. "That was pretty heavy," said Mrs. Hoffman. "Yeah, right," Barbara mumbled. When they got back to the house, it was a matter of getting into shelter as fast as they could. The house was totally silent bar the sound of the hail hitting the roof. "What a couple of weeks it'd been," Mrs. Hoffman let out a long sigh. "I hope things settle down soon. Don't you, dear?" She just nodded. Her mum talking only seemed to add to the rest of the noise in her mind. "I need a painkiller. Why can't they make pills for heartache as well as head?" Going up to her room, she went through a couple of boxes that were still to be unpacked. Barbara pulled out her last pair of glasses. Wearing them for a couple of hours and her eyes used to hurt, it was better than nothing. She pulled out a small card file which contained all the copies of newspaper clippings from the school library. But it was no use. Barbara needed to start gathering her thoughts. Everything she had learned, that the caller wasn't only threatening her, but also Sally. But why?